January 5th. Decided to try one at a different location, break it up from time to time. So look at all my book collection behind me. Pretty cool. Today, looking at Psalms 5, and I thought that was very good because it seems to be, he's very strong into these meditatives, which is good because thinking about God, pondering who he is, thinking about his values, we really rely a lot on the law, on the do's and don'ts, and what's going to happen if you do and what's going to happen if you don't. But sometimes he's just into this ethereal, this feel, this mood, this sense of anticipation, longing. The psalmist is very emotive. And if your emotions will guide your legality, you really have a stronger feel for what you should and shouldn't do because this is someone you care about. Give ear to my words, consider my meditations, hearken to the voice of my cry, my King and my God. He uses a lot of my's. This person and I have a personal relationship. We used to say things like personal relationship with Christ. Now it's more of a corporate, are you following the rules? Are you doing what you should be doing? Foolish men will not stand in your sight. Thou hatest the workers of iniquity. For me, I will come into thy house and the multitude of thy mercies, and in thy fear will I worship thee towards thy holy temple. And I am leaning on the bottom one also. For thou, O Lord, wilt bless the righteous with favor, wilt thou encompass him as a shield. The meditation of God because of what God not just will do for you because you obey, but for you because of the emotives involved. That God cares about you, not just that you obey him, but that he cares about you and he wants to be your shield. And by participating in the world like he wants you to participate, he becomes your shield. And says, lead me, O Lord, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make my way straight before thy face. This is a pretty good prayer that the Christian could do. Make my way straight before your face, that you are pleased with the things that I'm doing. Not that your pleasure, it's not a quid pro quo where I'm going to make you happy, you make me happy, but in a relationship, you seek to make the other one happy. So I really like where so far the psalmist has been very emotive about his feelings about God and his feelings about his personal God. He says, my God, my King, not just the God of Israel or the King of the universe. The personableness is one of the intrinsics of a Christian relationship, that we have a personal relationship with God, not just a corporate or a religious relationship. So when you read this early on, you feel a lot of emotives of what the psalmist is feeling. Going back to today in Genesis, we're doing 9 and 10. And yesterday we finished the flood. Everybody landed. We got all the animals off the boat. And he even did a sacrifice of animals to God as a sweet savor. And God stated that he would not flood the world again. And it says, God blessed Noah and his sons. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And it says, the fear of you and the dread of you will be upon the beasts of the earth. This is interesting. When God says something, he's not redundant. It's not, he doesn't repeat himself very often. There's usually a purpose for when you see something twice. But here he's saying something that the fear of these animals will now be upon you. You get the idea that up until now, the animals didn't fear man. I mean, the idea that men, there were no cavemen, so we can push that aside. But men and women for the 1,600 years from the creation to the flood were running from Tyrannosaurus Rex and all these dinosaurs. Well, it's not true. The animals were very kind, very pleasant. They didn't fear man. And they were all herbivorous, so they wouldn't have been fighting with one another. They wouldn't have been fighting with man. So you get the idea but after the flood, God allows men to eat meat. He allows the animals to eat meat. One of the reasonings for this actually makes a lot of sense. I'm going to rely on the Christian theory of creationism that there was a vapor canopy, that the earth was down here, and there was a canopy of water above. And when they broke that vapor canopy came down, and we went from a 2+ oxygen environment to what we consider today as a normal oxygen environment. And this would affect men, women, animals' physiology. about how we intake and utilize energy. Plus, you're in a world where you don't have as much greenery as you did before. Now, the good thing about this is God seemed to have left them in the ark long enough for some vegetation to appear. I mean, we don't know how many animals came off the ark. The idea is they didn't take every type of dog. They just took 2 dogs. They didn't take every type of horse. They took 2 horses. They didn't take every type of tiger. They just had 2 tigers. You know, that idea. Or 7 if they were clean and unclean. You get the idea. We weren't looking for all the different species. All of that would come about through DNA and through dominant recessive genes, etc. But the idea is that the world would not be able to sustain just on herbs and fruits and vegetables. Now, if you think about it, a good quality hamburger, good quality steak is nothing more than grain that has been compacted. And when you're eating the meat, you're actually eating the compacted grain that the animal ate over time. So we're still eating grains and stuff. We're just doing it differently. Plus, we're getting the amino acids and all these other, other chemicals involved. But yeah, we have this to where it's still tied to the grains. We talk about grain-fed beef and farm-fed catfish and all this stuff. What's hurting us a lot of times now in our diet is all the preservatives that are there to sustain the meat. Now, we go back 100 years or 120 years ago, there was open markets and there wasn't a lot of fresh food, and sometimes the food was bad to begin with, and people died and got sick and stuff. So we will say that we've gone farther in food preparation and food preservation for health than then, but now maybe we're swinging too far in. We want to get as much money as we can. We want to keep something on the shelf as long as we can, and therefore we're going to add too many preservatives. And then pesticides are all over the fruits and stuff, vegetables, to give us more life for shelf life. So it's kind of a mixed bag here. But here you get the idea that God's put the fear of man into animals, and animals would now go away from man, so man would have to turn into a hunter. And he put upon and every fowl of the air and all that moveth on the earth and all the fish of the sea and into your hands they have delivered. Every moving thing that liveth on shall be meat for you, even the green herb, even as I've given you all these things. Now, later on, like I said, there will be dietary laws put in place. And you get the idea that man is going from very healthy down as he's living in this one oxygen environment, gets to where his diet needs to be shortened or brought in, because now you can't process the foods that all these foods that you're eating, all of these scavengers and all the things that are eating waste and vomit and all of this stuff. You cannot be eating those because now your system cannot process. And this is my own implication, like I said, take it or leave it. But he does say you have to honor the blood, is that you cannot drink blood. And that makes sense. If you think about most of the diseases we have can be tied to either fluids or blood. And most of the time, this is why, like sexual sins are tied to fluids. Sometimes we have also things tied to blood. And here's, if you drink the blood of an animal or blood of a person, you're bringing in directly the diseases that are in that blood. And he also says the life is in the blood. This is important also. It says that he will require at the hand of man and at the hand of every man's brother will require the life of the man. Whoever sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. In the image of God made he man. When men kill men, they're killing the image of God. And of course with women, women are not open season either. They are also in the image of God. So when a man sheddeth a man, by man shall his blood be shed. So here is actually one of the 10 commandments. One of the first one is thou shalt not murder. Right off the bat, so if you want to see a connection of the dots with Moses, here's one of them right here. And he tells them to be fruitful and multiply, and he establishes this covenant. And he establishes it with men. He also establishes it with all the animals of the earth, that he will not flood again. And he makes a token in the sky that you'll see the rainbow, and the rainbow will remind you. Now we have to realize it's very possible that these people before the flood had never seen it rain. Remember, in the garden or in the world, there was a spring that came up and watered the ground, and there was mist that came up to water the garden. See, they didn't have rain. They didn't have snow. They didn't have weather as we understand it. They didn't have, and this would keep away extreme cold, extreme hot. They didn't have snow. They didn't have anything tied to any kind of water vapor, hydrolysis, yeah, like system. Instead, things were circulating through the earth, under the earth, and up, and the pressure, kind of like we do with water towers today. The pressure goes up, it pushes down, it goes into your house. You get this hydrological system going on. That's what they had in the garden to take care and keep the garden green. And you get the idea that this also could have been worldwide, just separated in different areas of hydrolysis. Like I said, it makes sense, but now they've destroyed the hydrological system. When the earth cracked, they destroyed the plumbing. Basically, that's why we have caverns and caves, and things are just messed up all over the place. And then we have tectonic shifts, and we have all these, the brokenness of these plates moving and hitting one another. Now they're going to have to create this hydrolysis of the evaporation into the clouds and coming down as rain. So and my belief is, until the flood, they never saw clouds form. This was a strange new thing. And now you can see that Noah and his family would start to shake a little bit. Every time it starts getting cloudy, is God going to drop a bomb on us again? And that's why he gives the bow in the sky, to remind you, no, I'm not. No, the bow comes after the clouds. And I would use that when to preach a sermon, that you have to realize that when God tells you the clouds are coming, there's a bow coming too. When we're going through hard times, there's still a bow on the other side. The promises of God that God has given us in Christ is our rainbow. We just have to wait for the clouds to part, and you'll be able to see it from far if you know what you're looking at. So he sets this up, and he makes this covenant, and he establishes it with me and all flesh that is upon the earth. So this one is for animals also. I don't know if animals are, some are colorblind or tross, but you get the idea. Star Trek cup. So cool. Anyway, and then we go through the genealogy, and there's an interesting story here that I think's been misunderstood about Noah and his son Ham. The idea that God was saying, and this is part of also my belief of the two oxygen environment. Noah set up a vineyard. Now it takes a while to grow a vineyard. You get an idea there, and he made some wine. So it takes a while to make a vineyard, and of course it takes a while to make wine. So, but he drinks this wine and he gets drunk. Now I've heard a lot of sermons and teachers say, well, he was drunk because of what happened to the earth. Well, for one thing, he spent 100 years preaching that judgment was coming. He saw how evil people were. They had their chances. I think he was a little more sanguine and a little less emotional. Yeah, he could have been sad, but I don't think he was distraught. I mean, he had a new world to come and the promises of God in building this new world, and that he and his sons and daughters-in-law and his wife would be in the forefront. I don't see where he would get all this sadness. We have no emotions here, so okay. You could get me on that one if you wanted to. But getting drunk, I believe, is because the wine fermented faster. And maybe he was used to drinking a certain amount just for the fun of it. We all can have a glass or so and not feel much effects. But if you drank a whole bottle, then you better be sitting down and have someone else drive home. He could have drank large amounts because of how big he was, of how healthy he was, how he had been in this two oxygen environment. He still had this system moving, and his blood and everything, his BMI was still moving at a pretty bad, his metabolism was still at a large rate. But I believe that because you're in a two oxygen environment, the bacteria fermented faster. And therefore, when he's drinking the same amounts, and once again, this is implication, but it makes sense that he would get drunk. Now, when he does this, he's in his tent, so he's by himself. He falls down, and he is uncovered from the waist down. That's what is considered nakedness in the Bible, is being, private parts exposed. Plus, you have legs and arms and blah. And you get the idea that what happens next is about disrespect, not about any kind of sexuality. I had a pastor once try to tie this to a sexual act, and I'm like, that it doesn't fit, and that's a gigantic leap. That is a leap of assumption of implication. Ham saw his dad, and he told his brother. And you get the idea is that the brothers knew that, well, we don't need to be looking, it is improper. So they covered themselves with a cloak, marched backwards, and pulled the sheet over their dad. Basically, that's all they did. And Ham and Noah woke up and knew what the younger son had done to him. And here's where the men make the wrong implication about any kind of activity. We were not meant to be watching the amounts of nudity that we watch. It messes up our brains, even if it's male watching males, and males watching females and all this stuff. The amount of nudity that is absorbed today is frightening. But also, you have to realize that every culture had this. Every culture had dancing girls. I'm honestly believing, and I wouldn't split a church over it, but when Herod, would have, I believe a lot of these potentates like them had these dancing girls, and you'll see this in other cultures. I don't believe it was just ballet. I think that men were a little more lewd than that. And so I believed, and again, history could bear that out, but he saw his nakedness, he cursed Canaan. Now, interesting, he curses the son of Ham, not Ham. That he's searching the line of Ham, and that Canaan would be a servant to the other two boys. Now, this is a lot of times when we get from here, we're looking at prophecy. We're not looking at individuality. Later on, it talks about when Jacob blesses the sons of Israel. And there are blessings that happen to certain people. And it says a certain person is this way, a certain person is that way. Here's what a certain person is going to get. It's not about that direct person. It's about that lineage. So he's making, they're making prophecies. So these prophecies are not meant to be a curse. But if Canaan is continuing to act like his dad, then this is the curse that's going to follow. Chapter 10 is a very good one about the descendants of Ham. And you get to going through this. It talks about Cush, who was the father of Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter before the Lord. And carefully there, when it says before the Lord, does not mean that God is happy with what he's doing. If I do something before you in your house that is disrespectful to you, it's in your face. It's before you. Excuse me, sneezing. So you get the idea that some people get frustrated with it. Sounds like he's on God's side, but we know later on that Nimrod is not, because he sets up the Tower of Babel. But this one is about setting up the separation. And I'll show this real quick from my Bible, where, if you can see that, where they go into the different places and how they have the people groups that come out. And these people groups are not cursed by God, but there are certain traits which seem to be dominant in those areas. But the Son of Man came so that we might all be brought back. It says, out of one blood came many nations. That's in the book of Acts. So we see here again, out of one blood, and out of blood of out of blood of Adam came Noah and his sons, then out of Noah and his sons came everybody else. And God still loves the whole world. There's nobody that's cursed beyond. And then let me tell you, we don't see where Shemites, they also dropped the ball several times. The Japhlethites, sure, if you look at some of the things that they got into. So no one gets a pass here. But this one is specific. So you talk about all these different people. You talk about Shem. And you finish the chapter talking about the families of the sons of Noah. And tomorrow we start with the Tower of Babel. And it's a nice segue. The one good thing about Genesis is it doesn't leave a lot of dead air. You kind of hit the important stuff and you tie stuff together. And then there's always seems to be, no strong dead air on this. You're going from one effect to one cause, then one effect, then to the cause, and then to the effect. And like a chain, it's the only religion that has a chain, Judaism and Christianity, have this chain that goes from Adam to Christ. This nice, strong chain of the connection of truth, the connection of personalities, the connection of values. When you see the scripture that says Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever, well, you can see this. There's a similarity. He might deal differently with Israel based on whether they're obedient or disobedient, but he's still consistent. He's like a good dad. He's consistent in his goodness, but he's consistent in his firmness. And if you want to get on the side of his goodness, he'll be consistent with that. But if you want to get on the side of his firmness, he'll be consistent with that. Anyway, that's all I have for today.